Check. Hello, welcome to Music Industry Job Series. Yeah, the first little bit of the part of this is just going to be kind of a discussion between everyone, and then at the end, you guys can feel free to ask any questions that you might have to our speakers. Kind of to start, can each of you kind of like just kind of say who you are, like what your job is, where you work, your day-to-day operations, and just that kind of stuff?
Sure. Should I start? Yeah. All right. I'm Nate Kranz. I'm with First Avenue, the whole company. So what I do is oversee. I'm mainly centered on the concert side of things, and so what that means is I oversee all the booking, marketing, just day to day, whatever happens in the world of concerts at First Avenue, or other venues that we might be renting out. I have a particular focus on sort of the bigger shows. I'm a little bit more hands-on. We've got a great team over there. But then I also just, in general, every day I oversee the business from everything from security to maintenance to whatever happens. And when you have several concert venues, that keeps me quite busy. But again, I came into this job. I've been there since 1998. I started. I came in from the record store world and thought it would be fun to get more into live music, and I really learned on the job. I started booking the 7th Street Entry, and just kind of kept adding to my repertoire over the years until we got to this point now where we own 6 venues and promote around 1,200 concerts a year.
I'm Nick Tveitbakk. I operate Pachyderm Recording Studios. My main focus is engineering and production, but I also have to run, we have a residential aspect to our studio, and so we have a big property there where there's lots of other operational things to do. But my main background is in music production and recording. I've been doing it 27 years, and at Pachyderm about 12. Yeah, and so that's me at Pachyderm Studios.
I'm Darin Kamnetz. I'm a freelance photographer. Shoot a lot of shows. So the work I do is a lot of music, but then also like stuff in the drag world. I work with a drag promoter in town. I do lots of commercial work also, so stuff for like brands like Red Bull or Great Clips and stuff like that. So I'm kind of all over the place in that. But yeah, my background's in music. I graduated from Moorhead State with a music industry degree, so I sort of come from studying music in terms of like music theory and performance and stuff like that, but then wanted to go into the music industry in some way. So I worked, after college, I worked at like Sam Goody Musicland and stuff like that. But then after college, got really interested in photography, and that's sort of how I've been involved in the music industry, is through photography.
Yeah, cool. Then kind of like, I don't know, I guess kind of like a fun question, but is there like a certain like band or just musician in general that you've either worked with or just seen that has kind of like really made an impression on you and kind of just like almost like kind of made you really want to start working like in the music industry?
I mean, I would guess I was already somewhat working in the music industry, but I've always been really struck when I first started my career, and even before then, I had a lot of inspiration from sort of the 1980s punk bands, and in particular, when I got to first meet Mike Watt, it was pretty amazing. It's still imprinted in my brain, and just getting to talk to him, learn his work ethic, and see him as a person whose records I knew, and then get to meet him and really get a kind of a look behind the scenes at what it's like to be a touring musician like that. And if you don't know Mike Watt, this guy, even now he's 68 years old, but when he goes on tour, it'll be 41 cities in 42 days. Nobody else is allowed to drive his van. You know, it's just, he has this incredible work ethic, and even if he's tired and he's you know, sleeping on the floor of the office or whatever, as soon as it's his time to get on stage, it's like a whole other person, and he's on fire, and you can just see the passion in what he does when he's doing it. Then the show's over and it's time to sell T-shirts and get back in the van, and he's mentored so many other musicians, and I would say even shown those of us that, you know, book shows a way that bands can survive even when they're at that, you know, 200, 300 ticket level, and keep your career at that spot and not end up in an arena, but still have a very successful spot.
Yeah, I think for me, I grew up in a musical family, so music has kind of always been a thing that we did. But similar to Nate, just like throughout my career, producers that have kind of mentored me and showed me just different tricks that they do, but also just how to be good people, and that usually brings longevity in your career. And if you're easy to work with and fun to be around, people want to record with you and work with you. So yeah, some people, I guess, in my career, bigger mentors of mine, John Aniello is a great producer that I love, and he's been just a great example. Nick Launay is another great example of just, again, these guys that have worked on legendary records, and they're just so down to earth, and they don't require any special thing at all, and they're right there washing dishes with you and vacuuming the floors and picking things up, and, you know, they're in their 60s and 70s and still just that way every day.
Yeah, sort of in the same line of thought with like mentors, not an artist, but like another photographer that influenced me a lot was like very early on. I met in town, Adam DeGrosse is a guy that he's basically been Post Malone's personal photographer for maybe the last 8 years, something like that. I met Adam really early on when I'd only been taking photos for maybe a year at the Triple Rock, which doesn't exist anymore on the West Bank, but I got to talk to him, and he'd been shooting strictly underground punk shows for probably close to 10 years at that point, and was just starting to shoot like hip hop stuff. And he was a guy that literally was like a janitor and then shooting punk shows at night, and then very quickly got famous for taking photos of like Lil Peep, and went to the moon, became Post Malone's tour photographer, literally working with like one of the biggest, you know, top 5 artists in the world right now. So meeting him early on, I got to see like the work ethic, and just, you know, not caring about, you know, becoming a superstar or anything. He was just grinding it out for years, doing black and white, gritty stuff that was in his voice. He wasn't trying to like make his work look like anyone else's. It was just his. So I think that was a big influence in just seeing like, you know, putting in the work and, you know, being true to yourself in terms of your art.
Oh, it's sick. It's sweet, like hearing about all like how you guys have some punk like roots, because that's been just such a strong like genre just in the Twin Cities, and it's still like booming like crazy right now. That's really cool. I guess another question that I have is, what was kind of like your guys' career path to getting to the position that you guys kind of work with today, or work at today? Were there any like major like hurdles that you had to overcome, or just any like major like events that were like, or just kind of like stuck with you?
You know, I like to say I kind of stumbled into this just because, again, I really loved I loved music. I loved being around it. I didn't have a solid idea of what I wanted to do when I became an adult. I knew I wanted to hang out at the record store, and once I had the opportunity to get into working at First Avenue, I wasn't even necessarily, I mean, I didn't really even understand that there was a job booking bands. I started doing ticketing there, and once I saw what was going on behind the scenes, I pretty much set my mind to the idea that I wanted to start booking the 7th Street Entry. And it was largely because I could suddenly see the calendar, and there was all these bands that wanted to come through, and nobody that worked at First Ave had any clue who they were, and they weren't getting booked. And so I just started bugging these guys, like, hey, why aren't you booking Bob Log? Why aren't you booking this stuff? And it worked. Eventually, they just said, if you're so fucking nosy about this, why don't you do it? And I started booking new band night, and I really just kind of learned on the fly for, things were a lot different back then. There was no email. We were faxing offers to bands or whatever. And so I've seen this evolution from doing that through towards, I would say a big challenge was, of course, 2004, First Avenue went bankrupt. But it was also a huge eye-opener for those of us, for me, for my colleague Sonia, who also does booking at First Ave, in that we suddenly had the rug pulled out from under us. And we had all these agents calling us saying, well, no, you're the ones that signed the contract for this band. I don't give a shit that that your boss declared bankruptcy. I have a band that's driving there from Chicago. What are you going to do about it? And so we kind of learned on the fly, and it was a real real lesson for me that, okay, I have this responsibility, and it's not just like a normal job where I'm going in and filling in something on the calendar. There's these musicians that are out on the road, and they're depending on us to pay their bills and to get their, to get on stage or whatever. And we figured it out. And of course, we've been on we've been able to develop artists over the years and do bigger and better shows. But at the end of the day, at First Avenue, we're still rooted back in that kind of mindset. We figured out that for us to be successful, for me to be successful at my job, I'm really a conduit to connect the dots between who's this artist that wants to come through town. How can we find the right spot, whether it's First Ave, 7th Street Entry, Fine Line, whatever. What's the room that they can play that they're going to be successful in? And what can we do as promoters or as venues to make sure that they have the best show they can? And conversely, then you're also looking to the audience, because you have to have both things working for a successful show. And that's just what we've been rooted in ever since, is let's take our responsibility seriously, and let's give these bands the best time they can have.
For me, I went to McNally Smith before it was McNally Smith, and now no longer McNally Smith, but went there for 3 semesters and got a job as an assistant engineer, and never finished school. And I probably shouldn't be saying this at a university, but one of my professors was like, you're going to learn so much more on the job. And so a lot of my stuff, skills that I've learned is just trial by fire. Back then, it was a little more hardcore. I think if you screwed up, like, we would get kicked out for like a week of the control room, and you'd have to go answer phones and clean the bathroom and vacuum and like do all these things, and then you could be let back in. Now I don't subscribe to that. Like, we usually have like debriefing sessions with interns and assistants, or at least like if something really bad happens. And so I guess I just learned a lot by doing. Some of the big challenges, there's always, there's a studio in town called Future Condos, and it's a funny name because that's probably the biggest challenges I've ever like had to meet. Is this building is bought, we don't want a studio here, you guys gotta go. And just like heartbreaking, it's the end of the world, like nothing's ever gonna happen again, but something always does. That's probably happened 2 or 3 times in my career, whether it be us getting kicked out because they want to build a gentrified neighborhood there or not, or just, kind of the basic, like, kind of artist living in the downtrodden parts of town and then become super nice and fancy. But what I've learned over the years is that there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and there's always, like, a new beginning every time something ends, a new thing starts. Pachyderm was the same way. My partner passed in 2015, and I thought everything was kind of over then, but his family stepped in and, took over and helped me kind of keep things going. So just because one thing ends doesn't mean it's gone forever. If you keep putting in the work and input and journey, it means a lot.
Yeah, my path to photography, like I said, I went to school for music industry, but not involved in photography at all. I was performance and industry major, but my path to like getting into the photography side of it was just getting into adulthood, and like I did jobs that were all sort of like at least semi-music industry related. Like I worked at a music retailer at their headquarters, and I worked at a record distributor too. But while I was doing that in my like late 20s, I started like music blogging. So I was like writing reviews about a show and taking photos, and this was sort of like in the early days of like Tumblr and stuff. And that was sort of how I got, like, I wanted to get more involved in the nuts and bolts of music still and get involved in the scene again. But the photography side of it is sort of what took over for me. I just got more and more involved in the photography side of it. And that became a fun side gig in addition to my, like, sort of day jobs. But then eventually the photography thing just took over where I could just do that full time. So that's sort of how I got to where I am now. And I was, I've been full-time freelancing now as a photographer for about 10 years. So that's sort of how I got to where I am, and sort of referencing back to like challenges. Since I've been doing this, the media landscape is a lot different in terms of like I used to be able to shoot for all kinds of outlets, and now it's like, the biggest one I shoot for NPR News still, and beyond them and like the Star Trib, there's not really a lot of like local media outlets anymore, and even nationally, excuse me, even nationally, it's like Rolling Stone and used to be Spin magazine. There's hardly any magazines. There's no print anymore. So it's like all that stuff I've had to sort of navigate in terms of like, you have to be flexible in terms of like, okay, I have to be prepared for what the next big thing is and just be adaptable, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's all really cool stuff. Kind of just like a last big group one before I get into more like the personalized questions, but what really makes you guys feel fulfilled in what you're doing? And like kind of just, I know you guys kind of touched on it a little bit, but just like what makes you guys like feel like this is like I feel like I'm really making an impact, and I'm really just kind of like doing the best I can in my field.
Well, I have a recent example. This last Saturday night, we had a band playing called Suicide Commandos. They had scheduled this gig. They had found themselves in the unique situation that these guys are all, they released their first record in the late 70s, and they would still play. They did their last concert was in 1979, to put it in context. And, about a year and a half ago, they contacted us and said that they wanted to do one, for real, a last concert. And they wanted to do their last concert because they were, approaching 70 or whatever, and they were all in great health. They all could still play great. They loved being around each other and thought, let's not wait too long to do this. So they figured out a live record to put out, and we had the show booked for December. And of course, a couple months before the gig, bass player gets diagnosed with cancer. So it's treatable. They're like, whatever, let's just get a date in March. We still want to do this show. Steve will be doing much better by then, whatever. So we got him this new date. Everything was going according to plan, of course, right up until it wasn't. And Steve's cancer came back. He got put back into the hospital. It was very clear he was not going to be coming to Minneapolis to do the show. And it really put the band in a real spot because they had all these special guests lined up. People had bought tickets, and they're very emotional. They, like obviously this is their friend, their lifelong friend and bandmate is in a serious medical situation. we talked to them, tried to let them know, like, hey, whatever you guys do, there's no wrong decision as long as First Avenue is concerned. But, keep in mind that you're also going to have a lot of fans that are going to be feeling emotional about this situation as well, that have maybe known you guys forever. Ultimately, they decided they did want to go ahead and play. They added even more special guests. They got another guy named Steve, coincidentally, to play bass, Steve from the suburbs. And they went ahead with the show. And while everybody obviously would have loved to see Steve Almus on stage, it also was the best kind of show. It was a great rock and roll show, but it was also walking through the audience and seeing these old faces and seeing so many people who were really happy to be able to get together and experience this, not just like a normal show, but like a really life event with your family and friends. And it's just a reminder of, just how important coming together and being with real people in the real world is, and how concerts are just the best way to do it, because you get to see amazing music, get to have that experience, the band gets to have that experience, but just the coming together of the audience is second to none.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that keeps me coming back, it's similar to like seeing a live show like that, but like on a smaller scale, where it's the people creating the music, and when they kind of achieve that thing that they want to achieve, and just that feeling that's in the room, and everyone's very excited and so happy with how everything turned out. And it's either after a really good like one take performance, or at the end of a session we'll do a listen down of everything, and everyone's just like so happy. And if the band that created all that stuff is that happy and excited and emotional, that their listeners and fans are going to be the same way. Just like as if you were at First Ave watching Suicide Commandos, like just that collective experience of humans creating stuff together. It's kind of what keeps me bringing back, or keeps me coming back, I should say.
I think, like, what's satisfying about my job is like, it's sort of like, photography is a thing that you create, and you sort of have like ultimate control over it in terms of like, okay, how you compose a shot and how you edit it, and it's very satisfying in terms of like, okay, I made this thing. But it's also like, since I've been doing this for a while, it's satisfying in the sense of like, you see like all the connections that your work has made with people, in terms of like, okay, this person that I took a photo of 10 years ago, they've passed, and this photo means a lot to their family. Or like, randomly, like, of all the events I shoot, like these two people I took a photo of, this was their first date, and now they're married, and they, that's, time has passed, and like, you get to see like all that stuff, and like all the various connections that tie back to just like the stupid photo that you took, and it all adds up. All that stuff adds up over time.
That's awesome. I love like hearing about just kind of like especially like in like music, just like things that really make an impact on you. I think that's really cool. So I'm gonna kind of get into more personalized questions. So the first one I have is for Nathan. What does the booking process at First Ave kind of look like? Like, yeah.
I mean, it depends, what angle you're coming from. I mean, for a lot of bands, like if you're a touring band, the booking process means that your agent gets a hold of us, and we start a conversation about, how much do we anticipate, like, have you been through? Do we have an idea of what your band is worth as far as tickets, so we can gauge what the right room is? Do we want to, what kind of show is it? It's an acoustic show? Is it an electric show? Let's first find what the right room is for you, and then hope that we can find a date that's available. Touring gets so busy now. It's such a big part of bands' career and ability to earn money, that in busy times, it's insane. We might have 15 bands all trying to get the same Saturday night in October. So there's a little bit of a game of trying to fit all the pieces together. But then for a new band starting out, sometimes there can be some frustration. Everybody wants to play a Friday or Saturday night, and we definitely subscribe to the idea that it's great, but just putting you on the 7th Street entry on a Friday night, if nobody knows who you are, it's not going to do us any good because we're going to lose money opening, and it's not going to do your band any good to play in front of anybody, or in front of nobody, I should say. And so it's also having these conversations with newer bands about networking and finding ways to get on slots with more established bands or whatever, but then also like keeping your eye on things so that you can help be a part of that process. I think ultimately our goal is always to try and help a band grow to where they want to be. Like if they have their sights set on Target Center, well, we're going to do everything we can to help them pick the right slot and make that happen. That's not everybody's goal, strangely enough, but if it is, that's what we're going to be there for. When we hire new booking people, I'll tell you right off the bat that anybody that wants to get into this, if you're going to do any of these jobs, 100% of the people are going to be huge music fans, and just be absolutely in love with it, which means you have your own tastes. But I tell our people, like, check that at the door, because you're not going to be successful in this business if all you want to do you're really into one genre of music. That's great, but you're not gonna last focusing on just I only like minimal techno. Well, fantastic, but you got to expand your repertoire if you want to be successful. So
I'd second that for photography too. In the music space where it's like, I only want to shoot 21 Pilots. There's like some very specific, and it's like the spread of music is like so wide. It's just like, challenge yourself a little bit and like get out there and shoot different kinds of artists and different genres.
Yeah.
And you'll surprise yourself as soon as you just open up your ears and mind to different experiences in different genres. It's like, at least to me, I've just found I can really appreciate things wildly outside of, like, for instance, in the live environment, there's things that I absolutely love and want to support and grow that I would never listen to at home, and vice versa.
All right, this next one's for Nick. But what does kind of your recording process at Pachyderm look like? Have you found that it's different from either other studios that you might have worked at before?
It's very different, and the same in the residential way that one of our studios used to be in California, and it had a house and a studio, and the live-in environment is really good for just kind of creative continuity. But at Pachyderm, I would say it's different just because the environment is so amazing, and I've never worked in an environment like that until John bought the place out of foreclosure. But it's just, there's no other place that I've ever worked that you can look out the windows and see the creek and the trees and squirrels and eagles flying around. And all that just influences people's just ability to relax and do better takes and just be better performers, get along more. So I think just as far as that studio goes, like, it's not just all the amazing gear and a good band in the studio, but just the overall environment and comfort level that people have. Just just like playing a live show, you can be nervous, but if something can kind of set you at ease, you're probably going to have a better show. And the same goes for the studio. So that Pachyderm is really, really good at putting people at ease.
Sweet. This next question I have for Darin, but what does your typical day of event schedule look like from load in till kind of like end of the event?
Like if I'm shooting a single show, I mean, it's definitely like for shooting music, it's gonna wind up being later nights a lot of the time. I'd say ahead of the show, just in terms of like planning, I guess, I do like to do band portraits a lot, artist portraits a lot. So like ahead of the show, once it's cleared that I have, permission to like be in the photo pit, be in the building taking photos, I like to ask artists if I can do portraits. So I'll be setting stuff up like that where I'm like communicating with, managers and like texting like, okay, when can we do this? So like before the show, before they even go on stage, like, okay, can we do a portrait? Can we get like a promo shot that they can use to promo upcoming projects or shows? And then once it becomes like, the time of the show, like, in the photo pit or whatever the restrictions are, you're shooting from the soundboard, taking photos of the show, and then it's, doing your thing there, and then, going home, and depends upon the, time frame of everything, but like either editing that night, if it's something that's going to publish in the morning, and that's a little bit less likely now, but I still do have gigs where it's like, okay, you have to have these photos sent in by 8 a.m. the next morning. But yeah, whether it's, midnight or whatever, finishing up your edits at home. But that's sort of my workflow of stuff in an average day, and, shooting a couple shows like that a week.
That's sweet. All right, so I do have more questions, but I do want to open it up to kind of like everybody here if they have any questions for our speakers. And yeah.
So Nick, kind of specifically, what was your change from, did you ever do live music initially, and how was your change from recording to live music different, and what kind of objects did you see you liked more in recordings rather than live?
I did do a lot of live sound when I was in college, and like the first couple of years after leaving college, actually in the hole, I've done sound in the hole 2 or 3 times. I like doing live sound, but I was always paranoid about my hearing, and so I decided to kind of get away from that. That being said, like as just an audio engineer portion of the job, like I always tell interns and people that are coming to the studio for mentorship, like diversify, like do as many audio jobs as you can, because there are definitely audio jobs out there that pay way more than you would recording a band, and they're just as cool. My older brother is also an engineer, but he does broadcast, and so all the Timberwolves and the Wild, and so there's so many layers to just audio engineering. But I just really liked the studio because just from my musical background growing up, just playing music and thinking about my grandpa and my dad, and they were all both great musicians, and just really wanting to like craft sound where I feel like it's kind of harder to do that in a live setting. Both and all audio jobs are great, but I really like the idea of really being able to kind of fine-tune things and get into the details.
I have a question for Nick as well. I'm just getting started engineering and recording artist myself, and something I'm curious is how do you consistently continue to book clients in an industry that's always changing, like how people seek out recording times and how people seek out booking sessions, and like what is your approach of gaining new clients or staying consistent with the ones you have?
I think the hardest part of running a studio is booking clients, and you really have to chase people down. And even when people approach you and they want to book a session, they might be super excited in an email, and you reply to them, and then you don't hear anything back for like a really, really long time. And so, and it's really weird because they came to you with this idea, and you just have to follow up with them again, and again, and again, and again, and just consistency. Also, just going to see bands and approaching them after their show. And I mean, the worst thing that could happen is that you just told somebody that they had an awesome show. But can I record your band? Can I have a space in my practice space, or would you come to my house? And just trying to get people into your space that way too. But you really need to constantly, and we do it all day. That's been happening today, is just seeking people out and reminding people like, hey, remember you wanted to book a week of studio time? Are you still interested in doing that? It's just a constant, nonstop kind of thing. Yeah, we're all creatives and kind of lose track of things maybe. So yeah, it's really just seeking people out.
Well, I mean, we've always had competitors. Obviously, Live Nation is a different beast from maybe previous competitors that we've had. But our whole thing is number one, I try as hard as I can not even to really worry about competition first and foremost. And I find that by focusing on what we're doing and doing it as well as we can, that's how we're gonna win the business. It's by sort of we're constantly trying to improve our rooms, but really with our people and with the ways that we can take care of artists. Really, obviously, everybody wants to get paid, right? What they're worth, and so we're constantly going up against situations of, all right, well, we don't have as deep a pockets as Live Nation, so we're never going to win on the game of outbidding. So we've just really focused on trying to have the best plan for a band. And like I said, so we might be talking to a band when they first approach us and we're holding dates or talking about them coming through. If we're talking about a 7th Street entry show, we also might start pitching them on, all right, and if this goes well, then this is next, and really trying to position ourselves, I guess, as a partner with these artists, so that as they do grow, we can kind of hang on to their career as they're riding that rocket, and hopefully be partners with them, as long as it makes sense. But we kind of have to compete on the quality.
This is kind of a question that I also had, but like, have you ever like butted heads with Live Nation, like, or in any like scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, every day. I mean, literally all the time. They buy up a lot of tours. They'll come in and we get the phone call a lot with bands that we have relationships with, that we have done all their shows up to a certain point, and we'll get that phone call and say, yeah, they decided this time they're going to take a Live Nation tour deal, but don't worry, we'll be back. Whatever. So yeah, we're constantly butting heads, but again, it's just obvious that they have much deeper pockets than us. So once that happens, we just we move on, and then I got to tell you, I'm constantly getting those bands back, and so I feel like sometimes people kind of dip their toe into that water, and it works out great for a lot of artists. But there's just as many that they try out that model and they don't like it. They want to come back, and we welcome them back with open arms and whatever. That being said, I also have a lot of friends that work at Live Nation, because it's just different market by market. Like, if I was going to play in San Francisco, I would probably want to play the Fillmore, and Live Nation owns it. So at that point, you got to make that decision. But for us, we just feel like we can do the best job in our market, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who's trying to get, an opportunity or a job in recording or live sound or anything like that, just to get better at it, or sort of job, especially in the Twin Cities?
Yeah, I mean, the really only way to get better at doing sound is by doing it. And so just taking as many opportunities as you can. And every time you get an opportunity, making sure that you show up and you work hard and you're attentive. And yeah, you can tell, like, when I get people in that are like, we call my producer friend of mine, he calls them tourists and lifers. And like, you can't be a tourist. You need to like show up And even if like your job is to sit in the back of the show and just watch the engineer and you're waiting for loadout, like just being, you know, getting him water, getting like just being a teammate. And like that, to me, that's the biggest thing. When someone comes in, like my assistant engineer Nils, when he came in, I could tell right away, like he was thinking of things to do, but not getting in the way, and just always on call. And like that's really what any sort of production, whether it be in the studio or live, is like we're all part of a team, and we should all be, you know, helping each other out. So if you do that, I know a lot of people that own live sound companies, and if you show up in that way, like you're definitely going to get a call again to come back. And it could be just pushing speakers for a while, but be the best speaker pusher ever. And you know, people notice. I've been on a lot of broadcast things where you can tell who's not going to be around next time because they're on their phone up in the lounge and everyone's just hustling and wrapping cables, and you know, so it's just showing up. That's the best way to come back.
Does anyone else have any questions or? Okay, well, I got a few more that I'd like to ask. This next one's for Darin, but is there a certain like camera that have you found that's really good for like entry level photographers and like kind of just getting into like photography in either music or just other events that are going on?
I mean, the cool thing, if you're getting started, you're interested in photography right now, like there's so much, you don't have to spend a lot of money. That's the thing, is like people think like, oh, I've got to get this big hunk of a camera or go to Best Buy. That's the worst thing. Do not go to Best Buy and just buy some camera. Like look on eBay, buy a camera that's 10 years old. You can get like any, like, you know, your mom and dad's DSLR from 10, 15 years ago. You can do awesome music photography on that kind of setup. And you know, if you know your mom and dad don't have one, or your friends don't have an old camera, look on eBay, buy something used. Don't buy anything new. You can get a camera for $100, literally. Like the digital cameras that they were making 10, 15 years ago. Buy a Sony, buy a Canon, buy a Nikon. Any of those brands, they're all going to work great. And I don't think there's a particular model, but like I shoot on Sonys. You can find 10, 15-year-old Sony cameras on eBay right now for $100 or maybe even less. And if you want to get started in music photography, you only need like one lens. Buy one, a 50 millimeter lens that separately would cost you literally maybe $100 for that lens if you're buying it separately. But yeah, I just encourage people to like do the thrift store, eBay route, because like the technology has been good for a while. So like you don't need the newest thing. And you know, all the software from the editing side, you know, even if you want to pay for the modern, you know, Adobe stuff, you pay the $10 a month subscription. It's El Cheapo. So, you know, just going out there and doing it is, you know, the challenge. I don't think there's a big barrier for cost nowadays because you can get stuff pretty cheap.
Cool. Oh, you have a question?
Yeah, for Darin. Getting into kind of event photography was your biggest thing. Do you think now, in this day and age, like blogging and journaling is the best way to get your name out there and building kind of client side and being able to build your name up? Or what do you think kind of now is the best way to build your name as a photographer?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, like the social media thing is great because honestly, that's how I built a lot of like where I'm at now, just because like that when I was starting out, Instagram was like a new thing. So it's very easy to get your name out there, and you just have to keep, you know, putting work out is the thing. So I think that is an awesome tool nowadays in terms of like attracting clients. If it's in the music space, you know, after I've been shooting for a while, like local bands are coming to me and saying, "Hey, can you shoot this show?" And you know, then you can start getting, you know, some paying gigs and build some work that's going to just keep attracting more people. But yeah, I think that's a great way to do it for music photography and, like you said, event photography too. Just like getting gigs where it's like event coverage and stuff like that. Yeah, I think the people come to me with that question a lot, and they're like, "How can I shoot this specific show?" And it's like, really, the first step is just going out to those really small bars where you don't need a photo pass. You can literally just walk in, and they don't care that you have a camera. But like, doing that once or twice a week for a couple months, just shooting whatever local bands are out there, and building your portfolio up that way, and establishing it. It's like once you have solid work, then it's like then you can get to the point where you're like reaching out to artists and their management teams and asking for photo passes, because that's really the best route is starting at that absolute smallest level of like really shooting in really small clubs.
Yeah, just the last follow-up. With kind of like media outlets being smaller, but do you think staying freelance was a good idea, or do you think if you have the opportunity to go to a media outlet and shoot contract work for them is a good option too?
Yeah, I mean, but if you have the opportunity to shoot as a staff photographer on any kind of publication, obviously that's awesome. But I love the freelance life. My work is super super varied in terms of like I'm shooting stand-up comedians, I'm shooting music, I'm shooting drag, I'm shooting like super commercial work. I shoot for the U of M here too. So I like doing that, and not like I know people that work at just a university, or you'd be shooting kind of the same stuff all the time. So for me, I love the variety. But yeah, those staff photographer and videographer positions are really hard to come by. There's not a lot of them anymore. Even NPR, I'm a freelancer for them. They've had staff photographers in the past, but I think just about everyone they have now is a freelancer too. So it's definitely you don't have the consistency, but I've been doing this for a while now, and my career is surprisingly extremely consistent. But yeah, the freelance life, it's worked out great for me, and I don't see that changing for myself.
I have a question for both Nick and Nick. I've had the opportunity to kind of record my own artists, and I've kind of hit a wall with having, it seems like, the ability to gain clients and run sessions, but not actually being able to put my ability to get paid what I'm worth. And I was wondering if you guys have the ability, or kind of the answer to what you might have done to change your trajectory to start finding these gigs and finding these more consistent sessions, even after having the more experience.
Sometimes it just takes longer, and you just need to keep. I know people don't like to say this word anymore, and I'm trying to find an alternate word these days. But the grind, right? And it's not necessarily about grind, but just showing up and patience, and in those scenarios where you think about like why I should be getting paid more, like maybe sometimes ask yourself like, why am I doing this? And if it's because I love doing this, then there's your answer right there. Sometimes you get paid $15 an hour, and sometimes you get paid 50. A lot of times when I was freelancing, my rate would go up and down based on the project. I have found that if you ask for, and it seems counterintuitive, but sometimes when you ask or you tell them that your rate is too low, they don't look at you in the same way as if your rate was like, more on the level, maybe even just a little above where you think your rate should be. But for whatever reason, people look at that like, oh, I'm going to go to this guy because he's worth this. I'm, the $50 an hour guy, not the $5 an hour guy. But yeah, it's just, it's that, and also just, why are you doing it? And if it's because you love to do it, then the more you do it and the more you keep showing up, and consistency, all that other stuff, will just fall into place.
And I'm sure once you've worked with some people, you establish a relationship, and hopefully it grows, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions from? Yeah.
For someone just
call studios in Minneapolis and ask them how much they charge. Maybe you book a studio and spend some of your own money and bring a band in there. And that's usually a good barometer of like what people are getting. And if you book a couple of places, if you have the opportunity, you can see kind of the different levels of places, and maybe this place is overpriced, and that will help you figure out kind of where you need to be.
Okay, cool. I have another question for Nathan, but how is the promotion process, or like after you've booked a band, kind of look like?
Well, in a perfect world, all the tickets are sold out, and we're just waiting for the concert to happen. That's not the way it normally works, but I guess typically what you do is, like, a lot of work goes into setting it up, and like, every show is different, right? We all know that, but typically you're going to follow a pattern of, you get your information about the band, you have your date, you're confirmed, you work with the artist. A lot of the time, you're going to announce with a whole tour, which is great, because then you're going to get the benefit of hopefully some sort of national tour marketing, or at least national coordinated release with the band on their socials or whatever. And you're really trying to like make as big of a splash on that day that you're announcing the show and pushing all the focus towards that on sale. And then once you get through that, like kind of on sale period, which might be, for just a normal show, might have a artist fan club pre-sale on a Wednesday, local or radio pre-sale on a Thursday, and then general on sale on Friday. What we do is on Monday morning, then you kind of look at all your shows that went on sale, and hopefully you have more of them trending high. But what you do is you look and you adjust your budgets and say, like, you kind of look and see what was working for that initial on sale period, whether that was meta ads or whatever. And you just got to kind of keep your eye on things throughout the whole process, and hope that throughout the marketing campaign for each show, that there's different little things that can happen. For a bigger show that I've got, like that we've got Alabama Shakes playing at the end of August. Well, they haven't had a new record in, 10 years, right? And so we announced the shows at the same time as a whole bunch of national stuff, but we also know we have these little benchmarks that we're looking forward to between now and the show. Like, they're going to have new music coming out, and so then we're going to adjust our budgets to kind of, time it so that we can get the most bang for our buck, and you just ride it out till the end and hopefully sell the show out. Doesn't always work that way, but really it's a partnership between in the best of circumstances, we all have the same goal. Promoter, artist, label, etc. all want to see the show succeed and sell all the tickets.
Yeah, sweet. Any other questions? Okay.
I'm curious, how much are you working with the numbers? How much are you setting invoices out to different bands, and what does marketing for that and budget allocation look for that different between each band?
I mean, I think we start, like, if you kind of look at the venue size and how many tickets you have to sell on a just generic basis, we maybe set it for 10% of the budget, 10% of what the revenue for a show might be. But it can fluctuate all over the place depending on the circumstances of the band, or even I guess that's music. If you're working on a podcast, our budgets are very little, because we've all come to realize that the only way to sell tickets to a podcast is via the podcast, right? They need to announce it and kind of push it. I can put up a poster or whatever, but that's really, artist-driven marketing. But for the most part, it's just all a part of the overall budget for a show, and we kind of have an idea of what the plan is going to be. We're going to tailor make it for each individual artist, but you sort of get a feel for, all right, this is this type of music. We know it's going to be real heavy on TikTok or whatever to connect. We know how much those ads cost. Whereas if you're working on something else that has a ton of commercial radio support, you might have a smaller financial budget, but you have to, budget. We're going to need 200 tickets because KQRS is going to go crazy on this one. So we need to budget to have a lot more comps or whatever.
We have time for like one or two more questions if anyone else would like to jump in. Yeah.
Right now, we're kind of in a time frame where if a band thinks they should be selling the 1,000 cap room, I say let's do 750. But that's it. I'm kind of joking, but kind of not. It's just sort of how audience sizes have been going right now. It goes up and down. The trends do quite a bit, but a lot of it just has to do with relationships. And I'm sorry, I didn't say one thing. Like, our job is so much math, it's unbelievable. It's like, it's boring, it's math. That's what I tell my daughter every day, that if you want to get into concerts, pay attention in math. I heard, you're a freelancer, you're doing math all the time.
Yeah.
You're booking these things, you're doing math all the time. I know it seems dumb, but it's really relationship, and I think, I don't want to speak for these guys, but I think they would say the same thing. So much of it comes down to the relationships with who you're working with, level of trust you might have with one person that you might not have with another. When you're doing the volume of stuff that we're doing, it's really all over. It's really all over the place. But for me, I have these long-term relationships or short-term relationships, and there's a lot of guesswork involved. But yeah.
Cool. I'm just gonna ask one more little like kind of fun question, but are there any like local bands that you guys are really like into right now? Either current bands or even like past local bands that you just really like and just love to listen to?
I know one local band. They're kind of bigger now, but they came to the studio last year called Porch Light. They're really awesome. And they're really, I have no idea like where they even came from, but now they're playing all over the world. Right now that's who I'm really into. Old bands. Someone was wearing a Lifter Puller shirt the other day, and I was like, yes. I found a CDR in a studio I used to work at that Lifter Puller recorded a record, and a forever fan.
I mean, I love all sorts of local bands. I'm old. I have a special affinity for some of these bands. One of my favorite things is to see a band go from no fans to the maximum amount of fans. And I've done so many shows with, like Atmosphere and Rhymesayers that, I mean, I've lost count a long time ago, but it's just so fun for me still to work with those guys. And I always have a great time at the shows. Trampled by Turtles is another one that it's fun to meet these people, work with them, and then just watch them take off and grow and be a part of that whole experience. But I could go on and on. Right now, I'm really super excited to see the Plastic Constellations reunion show.
Nice. Yeah, I love Radio K. I still listen to Radio K all the time. She's Green is great. I love the shoegaze stuff that's back. But yeah, just speaking of like seeing artists go from playing small shows to big shows. Like when I was starting out doing photography, I was shooting Lizzo on an almost like weekly basis. It felt like, to the point where I was almost like sick of it. But it's like that was a really fun, come up to see her go from doing local shows for, a solid 8 years or something like that, playing big theaters here and then going nationwide with it.
Okay, sweet. That's all we have time for today. But yeah, thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for speaking on this. I know that this was really cool and I really enjoyed just hearing about all of your guys' experiences and thoughts. But yeah, just thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Yeah, thanks.